Hello, Internet. This is Kopitiam Council once again. New episode, new week. And of course, always you are with Haffisz and Adi here. So, Adi, I think there's this one country that every time we mention it in the Kopitiam Council, is either about election or there's a huge protest going on. I mean, this country definitely more than those two things. But about the recent demonstration also in this capital, not only the capital and a few cities around in Indonesia as well. What's your first reaction to it?
Well, I think it's quite tragic to see Indonesia in the state that it is now. We've seen countless videos on social media going about how buildings are being burned, protesters everywhere, rallies against the government, and asking for the members of the parliament in Indonesia to explain themselves over, I think, a long-standing and brewing issue, and only now it had the right amount of flames to finally erupt into something even bigger now. I think it's just similar to what's going on here in Malaysia, is that these small problems, but a lot of small problems compounding into one big explosion, right? And I think that's what's going on in Indonesia right now. But I think for a refresher, Hafiz, how would you characterize the whole situation if you had to explain what's exactly happening? Because a lot of things is a lot of little small things, but what was the lead up to what's sparked the outrage going on in Indonesians right now?
Wow, I honestly don't know where to start because there's so many angles that we can see. But let me try my best here. So on timeline, let's go back to. I wouldn't want to go back too much. Just want to go back because we talk about this also in the episode here on Kopitiam Council Adi, when we talk about Dark Indonesia Gelap. We covered that one, and it sort of took off from there as well, because this is where demonstrations where they were these are mostly students, on that day, where there erupt demonstrations demanding certain things from the universities, mainly cutting budgets because of all the budgets are being cut, diverted from universities, so they ended up not having much money. Now, this is also, Adi, related to the promise, which is election promise, which is we covered, of course, as well on Kopitiam Council here, when we talk about Prabowo with his ambitious plan to do the nutritious free meal, the makanan nutrisi gratis in Indonesia, which is I already on record mentioned here, it is an ambitious project to do. Yet this is another turn of event that prove that statement right, because all the money that should be put into anything else, or hospitals and whatnot, now have to divert it for this so-called Prabowo's promise, because otherwise he will be known as a president who does not realize his promises. So the link up of it, these two, Adi, with Indonesia Gelap demonstrations. Now, the timing is, you must be asking, why now? All right. Texas, everything is up for a few months now. So there's so many unrest where people looking at, one another like, hey, what is happening? Rupiah is not going well. Our wages isn't going up according to inflation. And we are still struggling to pay taxes, yet the government wants to impose more taxes. The reason why the eruption here is the certain, I may say, the parliamentarian or DPR members who have been showing off, flaunting their wealth, not just on social media, but the statement that comes with it. So there's this famous, if you go to TikTok or wherever right now, you can see a lot of protesters ransacking his house with all these luxurious watches, memorabilia, you name it, fancy cars. This guy has it. And on record, he has 18 houses in Jakarta, in Indonesia alone. So that's in Indonesia. I don't know, it's abroad. It's insane. This guy, well, it's insane. His name is Ahmad Shobroni. And I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, he came up with a statement where he said they call the rakyat tolol, literally means bodo. This is just one of DPR members, but why him and why now is because all the steam built up from his flaunting his wealth, all the statement he made before referring to and judging the people who try to criticize him and DPR, and now he reap what he sow, basically telling other peoples that they're not worth of it, and then he knows best. And he is right now in overseas, and I don't think he want to come back as soon as possible, because looking at the thing, it's not going to be a best timing for him to come back. But the timing, why now, is very crucial, Adi. And this is we're going to talk about this later, and how Malaysia should learn from this. Like, it's not just some policy or rhetoric, but leading up to it, enough people, long enough time, this kind of thing will erupt.
I don't think it was just one Nasdem party member, right? I think alongside that was Nafa Ulpak, who made a statement saying that increasing allowances for MPs because 30 minutes to commute to where the parliament gathers is too long, and then it's very out of touch, right? Isn't it? All these kinds of statements, and then like you say, Sabroni, who has all these flaunting his entire wealth. His whole house, you can find all kinds of luxury watches, luxury items, things that, where did all this money come from? Where is this money supposed to go to? What is your function as a member of parliament if the people in Indonesia are still facing a lot of economic hardship, especially now, right? It's like this whole culmination of out of touch leaders and parliamentarians has just been. It's enough to tell it frustrates people, right? What are leaders doing if they're doing all of this nonsense, right? And I'll say like this because you mentioned what Malaysia can learn from this, because I don't think Malaysia is exempt from this kind of situation, right? Because we've seen a lot of our own leaders as well doing the same thing, flaunting their wealth or somehow getting away with things that they shouldn't be doing. And Indonesia, we've seen that their culture of protesting, the whole Konoha and One Piece imagery and that kind of idea is very strong in them. They're willing to take up to the streets to protest and fight for all this. And I wouldn't say compared to back then, but even till now, we have to make the case that there are a lot of authoritarian tendencies in Indonesia that's concentrated very heavily in their leaders. And Indonesia and Indonesians have been fighting against this push for a very long time. There's always this back and forth struggle between authoritarianism with leaders, authoritarians who are out of touch, who don't really know the struggle and situation of the average Indonesian. And then I think when it came to the past president, Jokowi, who was able to at least keep up that veneer of being the people's politician, right? The people's president, at least stifled some kind of unrest from the Indonesian people. But now you have Prabowo, definitely comes from the authoritarian pedigree, back then with the military background, and not being as dynamic as Jokowi. And now you have individuals in parliament being a bit more gung ho, a bit more open to say these kinds of things. It's a spill. It's just igniting a powder keg that's already there, a powder keg of outrage that's already there. And I think Indonesians themselves are very right to be upset about this, especially because once protests came out of this, somebody died from it, right? There was a protest, and an individual was killed, was run over by Indonesian authorities, the people that's supposed to protect the Indonesian people themselves. And I think it's just compounding one after the other, one issue after the other, making things even worse. And you have them, like you said, Zaroni, painting these protesters as stupid, tolol, and the stupidest people in the world, right? What I mean, it's one after the other. Why would you tell people who are upset are stupid? It's like telling them you have no right to be upset over a difficult economic situation, and you're not right to be upset over us making out of touch statements that we don't know how you feel. It's very tone deaf, extremely tone deaf, and very disappointing from a member of parliament. But then again, what can we expect from politicians sometimes, especially this part of the world where you can get away with the stupidest things ever, right? And like I said, we're not exempt from this. But right, I think Prabowo is currently on damage control, completely trying to handle this. But I think all the non-committal, nice, fancy things that one leader would say just to keep things calm and keep temper any kind of passions here. But it's fascinating to see that for Indonesia, it's and alongside us as well, because we're also having quite a lot of wave of protests and rallies as well over many different kinds of issues as well. It's like this seems to happen every once a decade. Huge outcry, pouring of people coming in to show their distaste and their dissatisfaction with whichever government there is. And I see that for Indonesia, it's another, it's that time of the decade really. And I think for us is that we're not to that level of scale yet, but I think it's just around the corner where we will get back to what it was like back in those Bersih days, or when people tried to get rid of Bosco, right? So I think we're on our way there for another round for this decade.
Well, we had to be fair, we had our fair share of public demonstration, but nothing at this level at all. You mentioned clearly just now the connections between Prabowo and then the history of democracy in Indonesia. I mean, Adi, if we can just go back to 20 something years in May 1998, where 4 students, Trisakti students, university were dead as a result of, again, police brutality, so you may say. Of course, at that time, the army general was is Mr. President himself, Prabowo at that time. Prabowo Subianto, under the president of Suharto, was someone who responsible to deal with the protesters. So again, Adi, this is a history repeating itself. He may say this an accident is not supposed to happen. But come on, you are the president, and it happened again under your watch. It definitely is, there's something connecting you to this kind of incident anyway. And he mentioned in his speech that, the army, the police should respond to these protesters with the strongest of a response. So what do you expect from someone who has a natural instinct as an army, now a president, to deal with this kind of thing? And yes, he says that trust the government and whatnot. In this time of the heat at the moment, who wants to trust the government more so with whatever you mentioned right now? There's a run over by the police. It's supposed to protect the people, and the parliamentarian who, well, not all of them, but some of them, making stupid statement like tolol and whatnot. So this all belittling the rakyat is, definitely a lose-lose situation, not just for the rakyat, but also for the politicians themselves. I just want to go back again about this protest, Adi, because I mean, Indonesia has, if Indonesia is a university student, Indonesia has a master or a degree in public demonstration. But what we can learn from this is that the check and balance is very important, and how we see it unfold since Prabowo took office is very quite revealing. That Indonesia in 1998, after Suharto fell, the oligarch that surrounded Suharto may not be seen in the front line anymore, but they morph into a different form and different being. And when Prabowo came back into power, we see it in the front line again, so to speak. So this is where we see, after 20 odd years or 30 years, the absence of so-called, these aristocrats, or whatever they want to call, oligarch as well. They come in many shapes right now that try to surround Prabowo, and as we can see, it shows why Prabowo wants to increase the allowance, like for example, the housing allowance, because Prabowo wants to buy DPR, and DPR, you know, needs to be aligned with Prabowo for him to move on with his popular policy, like giving free food to the students. And make no mistake that the people who actually the oligarch, they are still controlling. These are still invisible hand, even though we don't see it so very clearly during Jokowi, but with Prabowo in power, I'm afraid my biggest concern is that they are taking more front role, so that this will be another Indonesia that we see during Suharto. And demonstrations, the Prabowo have just been a president of Indonesia for 10 months, not even a year. And we see already like 2 big protests. And now, as a result, one of the Grab rider was lost his life in this protest. And it shouldn't come to this point. Prabowo should come in early with the strongest of response and avoiding all of this. But more importantly, the communication should be clear. Like, we always talk about like Madari government not so clear during the Zara's case, right? How education minister was wishing prime minister happy birthday, while at the same time people are demanding justice for Zara. Well, we didn't come to a point of huge demonstration. Well, there are certain demonstrations in KK and whatnot took place, but it's not as level as Indonesia. Because Adi, if you can just imagine, with 280 million population in Jakarta alone, there are 30 million, and you just take 1% of it, just some youngsters, university students, surely can fill up any streets, any malls, or what you have you, and do some serious damage to the streets. All I'm going to say, this is the fine line where the government should handle perception, clear communications better, so that even the slightest thing, very trivial thing, or details of certain events should be communicated clearly. Otherwise, it could lead to all of this. Like I mentioned, it was just about a demand to not increase taxes, but look at where we are right now. It's insane. Same thing could happen in Malaysia. Maybe Zara case didn't bring us to that point. If another incident happened, I don't know. I have no guarantee, Adi, that would happen in Malaysia as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for like Indonesia, it's started like very small kind of ish, like small dissatisfaction, small disagreements, like raising income for MPs, increasing their allowances, making them more, enriching them at the taxpayers' expense, when a lot of these elected people and politicians are already enriched through other means, right? Whether it be scrupulous or not, it's up to your discretion to decide. But it's regardless is that we know, I know, right? A lot of politicians in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, right? They're not rich because of their allowances and because of their salary, right? They're rich through other means, and increasing it is just it's more like a slap in the face to the average taxpayer, even more, because it's official. In a way, it's official. If it's done under the table, nobody knows, right? So nobody can say. But now it's out there for everyone to see, and then for a lot of the conduct of these elected representatives in their parliament, dancing, joget, all these kinds of silly things at the time, very sensitive time. It shows it's that leadership leadership will not be rewarded by being tone deaf and by being out of touch, right? Now with I think with the whole Zara thing is also a wake up call to show that every small thing can be blown out of proportion, can be taken to its maximum extreme when it comes to dissatisfaction and anger. And you never know because of how things spread. Misinformation can come around. It's harnessing people's outrage, people's anger. It doesn't matter in what shape or form. Is that it becomes a force in itself that can destabilize the situation, the current civil the civil society, civil situation we have here in both Malaysia and in Indonesia, right? It's a very parallel story. And like you said, because of the scale, Indonesia is at that level because of just the sheer amount of scale. There's more people being angry. In Malaysia, maybe we will get to that point if things keep up at the rate that this is, right? We saw with Turun Anwar, then with Zara popping up all across the country, right? Not just here in Sabah, all across Malaysia it is happening. So yes, I agree with you. There's no guarantee of what will happen, and we've already seen a fatality uh, on the government side, and now we're seeing fatalities across the board. Places are being burned down, people are dying as well, and this is a case when the anger has gone out of control. Right, it's conflagrated into a flame that literally consuming the country itself, and damage control needs to be very decisive, very I would say um, as in a panacea to the people. It has to be a salve to the people to show that commitment to to fairness and to the ideas of fairness and the idea of equality. Like what people are saying is that they want accountability, they want transparency from their government, they expect more better practices from their government, which I think is nothing. Is not. I don't think warrants being called tolol and being called stupid. I don't think that is warranted. That is warranted, and without any kind of proper damage control for what's going on here. Prabowo had to cancel, I think, his flight to China. I think uh, that bad actors who see this chaos as an opportunity to advance or create even more destruction and problems, they're at the prime position to advance whatever kind of chaotic agenda they want, right? And this is the last thing that you want. You have people who are angry, and anytime there are people who are angry, there will be bad faith actors that will be in there to do the most damage. And I've seen even then, I've seen some media coverage saying that potentially a lot of the vandalism, a lot of the burnings, a lot of the destruction are also false flag operations created by the government to paint the protesters as violent anarchists who are revolutionaries trying to destroy their peaceful stability and all that. Which, I mean, not far fetched to say with so much authoritarian power controlled and concentrated at that level. It wouldn't be surprising to see governments historically have done damage against their own population. This is historic thing. This has happened, and it wouldn't be surprised why government confidence in government would be continue to drop. Right. This is a complete. Uh, I wouldn't say it's a breakdown completely, but it can get there if things aren't being managed. And I think Hafiz may have showed our skepticism to the new leadership after the post Jokowi Indonesia, right? That will things be managed even better? Will it still be on the right track? And I see that. Well, I think we were right to be skeptical. We were right to be suspicious, and we were right to be not to be too optimistic of Prabowo's leadership. So a lot to say, a lot to cover, and I don't think this is going to be the end of it. All I can say is that I hope that our friends in Indonesia would be safe, would and hopefully the government would be able to find a peaceful and amicable solution to all this before it gets even worse. But obviously, the important part is I hope that the Indonesian people would get the justice that they want, will have the justice that they seek, and especially holding their government accountable. Same situation as in over here. We hope that our government will also continue to be transparent and accountable, and be, listening, more in touch with the people.
Yeah, certainly. Government wouldn't shy away from reaching to the all trick books when it comes to dealing with stuff like this. Like you mentioned, it happened before, and certainly gonna happen in the future as well. But before we record this, Prabowo came out with the announcement where he cancels the allowance mention and moratorium for all the politicians to go out overseas for the time being. So will this do, a little bit, could this fix the, is this a silver bullet they're looking for? I don't think so, but I think it will certainly pave a way to more calmer Indonesians in the streets, so that, more discussions, more demand, the actual root cause to be addressed, rather than just, not cancelling some allowances and banning some flights to for the parliamentarian to go abroad. That's it for this episode about Indonesia. I mean, I always passionate about talking about Indonesia. I think so do Adi here. So, if you want us to talk more about Indonesian, if you are Indonesian watching this from Indonesia, and you want to chime in, and you want to have something of your opinion, because you are much closer to the ground zero, please let us know by writing on the comment down below. As we talk always about international affairs, we're gonna go back to Malaysia up next, and you should stay tuned, because we're gonna talk about urban renewal act next. See you in the next episode.